All right, it says we're live this time. Now my platform is working again. I think I'm gonna have to rebuild some trust in technology. I'm gonna go over here and listen on Facebook. Oh, yep, it sounds good. So just to be transparent, we were 15, 20 minutes late going live. I logged into my platform and I appreciate my buddy Sean Whitfield texting me saying nothing like a good studio. Yes, Sean, but the studio doesn't have video, and that's where a lot of our interaction comes from. So you can't do live stuff from the video from the studio, which is a great studio. But if you're going to give me crap, I'm going to give it back to you. Today's not the day. It's been a little bit of a trust issue with some technology today. So I tried to go live. My whole platform had changed. Then I tried to do it Facebook, and it was a cluster. The good thing is, the reason everybody tunes in for this, we're going to talk about building trust, is Karisa is patient enough to say, you know what, Clint, figure it out. I am kind and patient, merciful, great. I give a lot of grace and mercy. Let me just stop that crap, bring it up. Now she's on her phone, and just so everybody knows, her speaker wasn't working correctly. And now she's worried how she sounds. Hey, Karisa Kaye, how you doing?
Hi, Clint Powell. I'm just trying to deep breathe through this whole thing. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you fine. Yeah, I know that you bought some new speakers, and it's not exactly what you were expecting,
Some
or
new mics.
microphones.
I
Microphones.
did. I bought
Yeah.
new microphones for this and they're not working. So I'm so sorry. I hope everyone can hear us.
Yeah,
Okay.
sure. And if they can't, here's what I've learned about talking to you all the time. Whoever's supposed to hear whatever they're supposed to hear will hear what they're supposed to hear, because that's how it works.
Yes, but also please feel free to speak up, y'all. Send messages and say yell into the mic or whatever.
Yeah, just talk up nice and loud. You'll be fine. And then we're going to play with that mic again and get it going. But let's do this. Let's jump in. So since we're
Yep.
late, first
Yep.
of all, a little deep breathing. Karisa Kaye, you okay? You had a good day?
Yeah, it's hot as Hades today.
Yes, it is.
So hot. So I'm like,
Well, let's be honest how we came up with this topic. So I sent you an article and a bunch of headlines and screenshots with all these different topics.
mhm.
And two or three times you'd send back, so what do you want to talk about? I'm like, well, the screenshots I just sent you last week. Well, what do you want to talk about? The screenshot. And then finally you're like, how about trust? And I'm like, see, we went through the whole thing to get to trust.
Yeah.
I think it's a good topic. So not just trust, because I think we're going to talk about what it's like to go into other relationships, but rebuilding trust.
Yes.
And let's start off on a serious note. That is something in your line of work you deal with on a consistent basis, is when that trust has been broken. And we always go, by the way, to the affair, right?
hmm
To the you cheated on somebody or somebody cheated on me or you.
Yep.
That is a big part of it, but that's just an example of trust issues, right?
hmm
All right.
Yes.
Talk to me about trust a little bit, how you see it in your business, and why you like this topic so much as far as being important to your clients. And then I've got some stuff I want to ask you.
Sure. I'm getting over an upper respiratory thing, so I'm going to try not to cough the whole time.
Okay.
Sorry. So trust obviously
Uh-huh.
is the basis of human relationships. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
It's the basis of relationships, and when it's broken, it's hard to move forward until that's repaired. I'm gonna have to grab water. This is ridiculous. I
This is
swear.
my favorite podcast I've ever done. I'm not even gonna look at this. I'm gonna mute her mic and I'm gonna keep talking. Do not go anywhere. I see the people watching, I see the people liking. This means that she is gonna say something tonight that somebody needs to hear, but somebody the devil doesn't want for somebody to hear it. We went through about 7 or 8 topics. Literally, we had this conversation, and rebuilding trust was the one that she settled on because it affects so many things. And when she comes back on, I'm 100% going to ask her about this, but I'll restate it. And then when she comes back, she can kind of take it a different direction. We all default to the trust that is broken when it comes to in a relationship, when it comes to the physical stuff, right? Someone slept around on you, they cheated, they stepped out. But like I was telling Karisa, the other side of cheating or breaking trust can be around finances, can be around secret messages with other people, can be around just not being a person of your word and showing up for somebody, like I need you somewhere and you're always late. It can be little micro aggression or a little micro breaking of trust. Chris, I think I filled in pretty good there. I don't know if you could hear it.
I swear, anything that's gonna come up is happening. This must be like a big deal because there's just so much effing stuff that's coming against it. Okay.
I told him while you were gone, I said that means that we're gonna say something tonight that somebody needs to hear. So
Yes, I was like praying over this. Okay. So trust is the foundation of human relationships. Without it, we don't get very far. And so if it's dating, if it's marriage, if it's friendship, if it's parents and kids, if it's employer to employee, colleagues, coworkers, what have you, teacher to student, we all need a certain level of trust in all of those situations and then some in order to make the most out of those relationships, our community, etc. So when trust suffers, at some level, we're going to suffer.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the foundation of a lot of my work is helping people repair where trust has been broken, if that's feasible. So we're going to talk about like practical things that people can do, um, and both parties and what that looks like, because it's not just like this random phenomenon where it just where you say just give it time. There are actually deliberate things that people need to do in repairing trust, and we're going to talk about it.
Yeah, I almost look at it, if you don't fix it, it's almost like when you go camping, a good campfire, it burns down, but when you kick it, it flares back up because you've not actually put it out. It's just hidden under the coals and the white ash.
Yeah.
And when it comes to trust stuff, there's so many different components of this that I think I could probably go down rabbit holes of
Yeah.
when your gut says something's wrong and you ask about it, but you don't ask in a healthy way, or you start becoming defensive. There's this, when you don't talk about it, there becomes this big chasm between me and the other person.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is it changes my behavior towards you, right?
Yeah.
So we don't talk about why we don't trust each other. It's just our
Yep.
behavior changes all of a sudden.
Absolutely. Yep.
All right. So when you talk about it from both sides, and by the way, I want to say this. I don't personally think all the time trust can be rebuilt.
I agree.
Sometimes I think we hang on to trying to rebuild trust because the fear of loss.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just starting to think about this, and I read a bunch. I'm not really sure all the time. I think it's worth a shot.
Mm-hmm.
But depending on the transgression, I'm not really sure trust should always be rebuilt with that person.
Agreed. Yes.
Okay. So which way you want to take this?
Well, big picture. So trust and forgiveness are two different things, to your point.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I think long term, all of us need to work on, when we feel harmed by somebody or hurt by somebody, working on forgiveness. And that forgiveness is for our own liberty and sense of freedom. But just because I forgive someone doesn't mean they are trustworthy again, or I need to trust them again, or it would be wise to trust them again.
Yeah.
Yep. So forgiveness is always a goal, just so we're not filled with toxic poison and contempt and bitterness and resentment. That stuff is poisonous for us. But trust, as you're saying, is not always wise, depending on the nature of the transgression and the nature of the party that you may or may not be interested in repairing with.
Well, and once you meet an adult, you meet a 20-year-old or 40-year-old or 60-year-old,
Mm-hmm.
there are people that trust quicker than others. My
Yeah.
definition of trust, I mean,
Yeah.
I think you can trust at deeper levels. I probably trust very quickly on a very superficial level. But once I've shown someone my underbelly and who I really am, if they are not going to speak to me what I need to I'm fine with it, but I retreat to the other side of the moat. And
Sure.
I will then at that point engage with someone through the sarcastic humor and the defense mechanism. But once I've shown it, and we're not, that's an issue too. So people trust quicker in different levels anyway. I mean, that's not a uniform thing, is it?
Correct. And that gets into like attachment theory, personality types, our past trauma experiences, etc. Yes. Now, Clint, I can't see if we're having any comments or questions.
Yeah, I got Aston. Some Morrison said that means the spirit is here. That's when we were talking about. It seems like there's a little warfare. Yeah, it's been 30 minutes of stress, but we're going now. So thank you for watching. And we got some good, I think we got a number of people watching and listening.
Oh,
And
good. Good.
yeah, so we're all good. I'll
Between
fill you in
my
on comments.
and microphone dysfunction and your platform issues, it's going to be a
And
hell of a
you're
show.
coughing.
That's why I said my emphysema.
Oh,
Yeah.
your emphysema.
Yep. Okay.
Let's get you in the iron lung. It'll be all
Lord,
right. All right.
that's real. Okay, so let's talk just some basic overview about some trust repair stuff. First thing is an apology. First of all, if you're considering repairing trust in a relationship, both parties need to be involved. Right? That sounds silly, but it's literally both parties need to be involved and aware of the issue. So if you're going to do it deliberately and intentionally. So the idea is not all people are willing to repair. Not all people are willing to own when they've hurt or been in the wrong. Right now the buzzword is narcissism, like all these relationships about narcissists.
Hmm.
And all of these people are dealing with another individual who's unwilling to own their part of how they've hurt somebody, how they've caused harm or damage. The key ingredient, obviously, to even begin the whole process is, are both parties, or are all parties, depending on the issue, willing to work on this and own the part that they've played in it. Does that make sense?
It does. I'll just throw this out there. I think too,
Yeah.
in the society we live in, I think we throw narcissist out there when we just don't get along with somebody,
Sure.
and we don't want to accept responsibility for what we're doing.
Hmm.
I mean, I'm not saying they're not out there. They are. But
Hmm.
according to my Facebook page, 100% of all relationships end because the other person was a narcissist. And
Yeah.
I think sometimes that can be a little bit of a crutch. One
Sure.
thing I wrote down to your point about both parties taking responsibility is I read a bunch of articles on this, and there were so many vague terms. Like, for instance,
Uh-huh.
me and Carissa, how would how would we define healthy communication? What
Mhm.
does it mean to own my behaviors, right? What does it mean to forgive yet not forget? I mean, my idea of what all that might look like on the other side of rebuilding trust is completely different than what it might look like for you.
Right.
And I don't, that's again why I went back and go, I don't even know if it's possible really to rebuild trust
Mhm.
at all. But those vague terms, do you have to talk about those definitions before you sit down?
Sure. Yeah. So, okay. So let me just walk through this, because that could take us 10 different directions. I do
Yes,
think
please.
it's possible to repair trust, because I have had individuals and couples do it. So, for example, I work with couples that there have been affairs. I do work with couples where there's been betrayal trauma, or if somebody's coming out of addiction. Oftentimes, people in addiction are intentionally very deceptive and do a lot of hiding. And so, when somebody's in recovery and trying to repair trust, there are a lot of deliberate, open, transparent acts and requests from their partner or family members that are necessary. So, transparency is key here. I would transparency. So, being open and honest. And I always tell people, err on the side of over communicating when you're being transparent. So, if we're trying to repair trust and there's been deception, for example, if there's been deception or betrayal or lying, um, one of the key ways of starting to repair that is moving towards transparency, being open and honest, over communicating about your whereabouts, about your intentions, about what this phone call was about, what that text message was about, what that email is about, who you're going to lunch with,
Mm.
etc. So transparency is really huge in repairing trust, especially when there's been deception.
Yeah, the thing is, uh,
Who's saying?
as a friend of mine, dude, you sat on me, who literally sat on me while my brother let the air out of my tires when we were kids. It's hard for me to trust you. Thank you, Damon. I appreciate that. And now a new author. He's got a great book out, so everybody should go check out his book. Anyway, thank you. I appreciate you bringing it up. You trust me enough to read that out loud and being very transparent with our guests. One of the things I wrote down when you were saying that though is I'm trying to play this forward in my real life, but in my mind.
Mhm.
Again, we think about the sexual stuff, but it could be somebody spending money when they're not supposed to be
Mhm.
spending money, or just, okay. But
Yeah.
so over communicating is great, but at what point is there a point
Mhm.
as a therapist do you help people realize we're just opening the same old wound a year or two later, talking about the same stuff? And I'm saying that as trying to get you to give me the feedback of a
Sure.
therapist, right?
So the idea is, okay, so consistent, another key ingredient to repairing trust is consistent change of behavior over time. So trust, like we said in the very beginning, it's one of the most precious pieces to the human relationship experience. And when it's broken, it can take a decent amount of time and energy to repair it. If both parties are willing and they're happy to go through what we would call repair rituals, let's say it's couple. I mean, again, this is like, there are tons of different scenarios we could talk about here. But if both parties are willing, the transparency piece, consistency and change of behavior over time is what starts to reassure my brain or your brain, hey, I'm serious about this. I really am sorry. I really want to do things differently. I really want to show up differently, and I want your trust back. So consistency, as well as when words and actions match up over time. So, I just read this the other day. An apology without a change of behavior is just manipulation.
Mhm.
So words and actions matching up consistently over time is oftentimes how we start to repair trust with somebody. The brain goes, oh, they're doing that. Okay. And so the brain likes reliability, predictability, consistency. That creates a sense of security. So if I'm showing up in the same routine over and over again and demonstrating these change behaviors over and over again, and what I'm saying, what I'm doing is matching up, that's naturally going to help people start to trust again. Does that make sense, Clint?
It does. And, I we said both parties kind of have to own their part of this. Um, I'm just thinking for the other person, that means
Hmm.
until they're ready or until it's at a more comfortable spot, you're going to get where are you going? What are you spending that money on? You're going to get who are you texting?
Correct.
There, it's not that me
Yes.
saying I'm sorry
Yep.
and wanting you to air quote trust me again doesn't mean I am free now of the consequences that
Yep.
now that I'm going to have to live with
Yep.
if I want to move forward. And that's where you have to earn it. But again,
Hmm.
I'm just you live a year like that or two like that, and eventually it's going to feel like you're micromanaged. And I don't know how you move past that. I couldn't do your job when it comes to this stuff. All the
Well,
other stuff I've been able to deal with. Trust this one is a hard one for me.
okay. Fair enough.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, if it's a fair recovery, that's a 1 to 3 year process because of what you're talking about. There's actually a protocol for a fair recovery, and it takes 1 to 3 years for a couple, if they're going to make it, to get to the place where we're not in hypervigilance, we're not in fight or flight, we're not doing this quit controlling me defensive dance like what you're talking about. Like, it's a process and it takes a while. And so we say, in the matter of affair or betrayal, if it's, hey, what we do is in that scenario, we create repair rituals where, hey, when I get triggered or you get triggered, we determine, okay, let's say, Clint, you're upset and triggered. Then I know that my role in those moments is you're going to come to me and say, hey, this, I'm upset, this is triggering me. I know that there are certain things that I can say or do that we've agreed on as a couple, that I know that that's my cue to show up for you in the same way. And that's going to calm your anxiety down, that's going to calm the rage down, we're going to talk it through, what have you. Again, that's just for couples in those scenarios. Big picture, it could be lots of things, but long term consistency, words and action matching up, and transparency are huge for people to go, okay, I think they're serious about trying to do this better and win my trust
Mhm.
back.
Yeah. I've told you this when we talked. It's going to be hard for me on this one because I'm kind of the guy
Yeah.
that once the trust has been broken, I will trust you again quickly. I will trust you again very quickly, but not near as deep. So I don't have as much
Yeah.
on this.
That's
That's
okay.
just does that make sense? I
Fine.
feel a little helpless in this one, but so
Yeah, and it's different. And then level, again, it depends on the level of transgression, right?
mhm.
Like, cheating on someone is different than, hey, I lied to you about why I blew you off for coffee. Like, I wanted to make some extra money, so I took on a few more clients, and versus I told you I was sick. You know what? Like, it's just a different level of,
Yeah, see, but both those, just between me and you,
yeah.
the somebody cheating on you, especially if they're not, and you're trying to get your gut, all that stuff. But that's one level of cheating. But the other one that I think is even a more of a red flag.
Hmm.
If you're gonna not tell me the truth over something that doesn't matter, I don't care why you miss coffee
Right.
with me,
Yeah.
but I'm all of a sudden gonna go, wait a minute,
You're right. Well,
when
now,
it matters.
yeah, now that would, to me, that leads my brain into a discussion about the reasons why people lie. And
That's
that's like,
part of this.
total. Okay. Well, reasons people lie. Are we talking about that for a minute?
Yeah, why not? I mean,
Okay.
well, listen, we finally got started. I'm not gonna hint. I'm not. This may be the part somebody needs to hear. You know.
Okay. Reasons people lie. Sometimes, like when people are brought up with a lot of trauma, where their needs aren't met, or that they learn to lie to keep themselves safe, or to have their needs met, it becomes just a bad habit in life. So that gets into attachment stuff and like human needs, etc., and like learning to trust that if I ask you for something, you're going to respond positively versus having to manipulate and get my way with you. So sometimes it's like a trauma based behavior that's learned in youth. um, Sometimes people lie because I hear this a lot with men, honestly. They just don't want to deal with getting their female partner upset. They don't want to deal with the emotional backlash or any kind of emotional upheaval, so they'd rather lie to make it easier on themselves.
That's the soft. That's the little white lie or the soft lie, And so, and I hear this, I used to hear this all the time, especially when I was married. You say some stuff like, and I hate to say this, but do you care where we go eat? No. Well, you
Mhm.
may care, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know that sounds silly, but in my brain, and I'm not using that as an example of a transgression, but my point of that is in a relationship, everyone compromises a little bit of the truth in order to keep peace. And
Okay.
so where do we draw those lines?
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I'm going to say this right now. I am convinced 100% what me and you have said for the last 3 years is I think it should be mandatory before you get married. You got to go through therapy.
Oh yeah.
I don't know why you have to take a test to drive a car, but you don't have to have some sort of training to go figure out how to live with another human being that grew up with totally different shit than you did.
Preach.
Yeah, well,
Preach.
I can't do
I'm
anything. If I
pro
get
preach.
elected to office, I'm doing it.
Okay. All right.
All right, rebuilding trust. Somebody
We did,
comes to you. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
okay. We didn't finish talking about all the reasons why people
Go
lie.
for it.
Some
Go
of the
for it.
comments. Go for it.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay.
Keep
Well,
talking.
I think this is important as we're talking about this and people that are worth trying to repair. If somebody is a pathological liar, that's like a disorder of that's a character disorder. And those are people you're probably not going to be able to do much trust repair with because that's like a disordered character flaw that Dr. Henry Cloud would say in his boundaries and dating book. He would say, "Run, run."
Mm,
So that's where you get into like your personality disorders, like the narcissism, histrionic, borderline, etc. Those are like pathological, and you're not going to fix that. That's going to take a lot of therapy and deliverance and whatever else, if even that works. And those people, there probably isn't going to be there aren't going to be a lot of options to repair trust with.
mm.
So if it's a pathological thing, that's worth considering. Is this worth my time and energy to try and repair this, or is this kind of a lost cause? Does that make sense?
It does. The issue with that is a lot of times people with those kind of personalities are so good at covering stuff.
They're
You're
fantastic.
6 months, a
Mhm.
year into it,
Mhm.
and now you're attached.
Yep.
And so
Oh,
there, then the fixer comes out in a lot of us that we want to, oh, you know what? I can live with it because they've never loved me before. You know what? They've never been loved by me. So
yeah.
now, and
I'll
all of a sudden,
I'll be the different one. Oh yeah.
right.
But like if people are pathological lying, they're lying about stuff they don't need to lie about. They're lying consistently. They're not trying to practice transparency, openness, honesty. That's like those are huge red flags that people should just like get away from.
Mm.
Yeah.
And there's also, and are I'm gonna let you finish up talking about why people lie. Keep going down that road if there's more that we need to know, please.
There are, but we can just stay on the trust thing. If people have other thoughts, they're more than welcome to put that in the comments section. We can speak to that.
Well, and so I want to say this about the trust thing too, and because we're going to ramble, and this is normally how our conversations go. We start off with 4 or 5 different things, and then we find our groove.
Yeah.
This may be one of those things that helps us.
Okay.
I think there's also people out there that if me and you're in a relationship and
Mhm.
you violate our trust, my trust, right? You hurt me, then the fixer comes out, like I said a minute ago, or I have been hurt from the past that you don't know about so much. I've learned to live in distrust and that chaos and that stressed out brain. That's comfortable for me, and so I'm okay with assuming the victim mentality, and just being the martyr. Right? I'll live in this, and I'm going to make it work. And look at I'm sacrificing, and you know you hurt me, but I'll live in it. I know people that have stayed in relationships and they've not tried to fix it. They just bathe in their victimhood
Okay.
and they assume that. Does that mean that's becomes their identity?
You're saying they're being harmed by their partner, but they're just remaining the victim.
Someone betrayed them, like they slept. A friend
Yeah.
slept around on his wife. She just kind of stayed in it. They didn't try to fix it really. She just said, "I'll forgive you." They didn't do any of this, as far as I know. But then it became that was who she was, and it would come up in awkward conversations, and it was kind of held over. There wasn't the healthy communication about it. It was just that you know what you did to hurt me last time, kind of thing. Which
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to make it. But in my opinion, I think there's people out there that are very comfortable living the lifestyle of living in pain.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And in couples counseling, there's actually this whole little triangle that I'm honestly bad at explaining, but a lot of therapists will do this with a couple that's in this cycle where there's a triangle. It's like rescuer, perpetrator, victim. and the couples shifting roles within that. Like today, I'm the victim and you're the perpetrator, and then
Mm.
somebody has to be the rescuer. And it just, yes. So that's a common dynamic that if people aren't made aware of, couples will easily stay stuck cycling through that.
They just play a different role
Hmm.
every
Hmm.
day.
Yep.
Wow. That's part of the trust thing, though. I mean, that's you got to realize this kind of stuff before you can start building a foundation of trust again.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. You don't know what to rebuild if you don't know if it's broke or not. I keep seeing you looking down, smiling. You must want to go into something. Do you have another topic?
No, I just want to make sure I'm remembering because again, this was such a freaking task just to get to this. I want to make sure I'm not so frazzled. I'm just rambling.
Yeah, we're all rambling a little bit, but that's okay. That's why
Here,
people like this
it's
stuff.
Thursday. It's
Huh?
Thursday.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Hey, I do have one piece of thing. Next
yeah.
time we do this, we are going to do it on your computer because when you use your phone, if we talk over each other, it cuts you out.
Okay.
So I am going to mute my mic when you're talking because I do not want to miss the wisdom that's about to come out of you. Give me your wisdom, Karissa. Give me
What?
your wisdom.
Thank you. Bless it. My dog just groaned. He was like, whatever.
So did 12 people watching this.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
Okay. Another thing that is actually important when it comes to repairing trust, there is just like there's 5 love languages, there are actually 5 languages of apology by Dr. Gary Chapman. So he talks about all of us, just like we give and receive love and affection through the 5 love languages, all of us actually receive apology through different languages more so than other languages. So I really encourage people to learn what is the type of apology that you need, that you can help, that you can receive, that will make the apology and the repair more digestible. So if it's, I just need to hear I'm sorry, like I have a lot of people like, just tell me you're sorry. That works for me. I I personally, as Karissa, think that gets you off the hook too easy. It's just, I think I've had too many people in my past use "I'm sorry" as manipulation. So I appreciate I'm sorry for blank, like identifying it. If I mess up, I want to ask for forgiveness because I tend to be proud. So I know that I'm sincere if I'm like humbling myself and asking the person to forgive me and giving them power in that moment. Because people can choose to not forgive us. And so there are different languages of apology that Dr. Chapman writes about, and that will really stall out a repair process if you're not speaking apology languages that are meaningful.
So if I come to you with my partner and there's been a violation of trust, is one of the things that we're going to do before we on the onset, one of the basic things is to figure out how we receive apologies, that language.
Yeah, I go through that with people.
Mm. Do
Yeah,
you know yours?
yeah. Let's see, like what I need.
Yeah.
I
You've asked me what my love language is on this thing. You don't get off
yeah,
the hook.
yeah. Well, I kind of just described it.
Oh,
But I appreciate when people acknowledge specifically the wrong and the hey, will you please forgive me for. So if you'll say, will you please forgive me for blank, 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 and identify it specifically, that's usually pretty meaningful for me.
yeah, because I'm reading here. It says, I'm sorry, I was wrong. How can I make it right? I'll take the steps to prevent. And then can you find it in your heart to forgive me?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
Some, some people I work with don't care at all about words. Words are cheap to them. They just want to see behavioral demonstrations. They just want something done in action. They want action or behaviors that just demonstrate apology.
I'm gonna ask you some ground, just like on the ground level questions. So I'm in a relationship with Suzanne or Barbara or whatever.
Okay.
I've screwed up, or she's
Barbara comes up every podcast. We need to find you a Barbara.
no, we don't. We
Okay.
don't need to find me a Susan. There's it's okay. We're
Okay.
fine. Yeah.
Okay.
And we've just to keep the consistency. We haven't talked about your uterus either. So now that we have, it's
Wow.
it's a fine podcast.
Wow.
There we go.
Wow.
So but so
Out of commission after reproducing 37 times on the farm.
visit podcast probably 6 or 7 ago. We're still bringing up how many kids she had when she was
It
out
was
defending.
because of blue moccasins. But anyway,
Yes, thank you very much for bringing that up.
you're
Uh,
welcome.
so we come to you, Barbara and I. Barb, I like to call her Barb. Barb and I come to you. There's
Uh-huh.
been an issue now. The joint Facebook accounts. Do you give? Let me jump ahead. Do you agree that people should have passwords and should they have
Yeah.
access to?
Yeah.
Oh, wow! You answered that fast.
Yeah. I just have too many people that have used it. Yes, I do. Yep.
There's no discussion on this one, right?
Yeah.
So what happens if somebody pushes back and go, I don't want people, I don't know what somebody's going to send me. I don't know why. You know what I'm saying?
I don't. Go ahead. Keep going on that.
I'm just saying the pushback. You got to have pushback. Does everybody just go okay? Is everybody just so riddled with guilt when they talk to you? They just go, yeah, I'll take that. That'll be fine. I
No,
mean,
people push back all the time, but it's usually people that are trying to hide things.
oh, see, see, I don't, so that's the mindset of what do you have to hide if you got nothing to hide? I don't, I'm not really, yeah, okay, I get that. Um, I'll tell you what I think. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that's a weird one. Emails, phone, and text messages, everything.
I think if you're married, yeah, absolutely. I think
Mhm.
that's the whole two shall become one. Like there shouldn't be anything hidden. Like for me as a therapist, I have to figure out how, Lord willing, if and when I ever get to get married, like how that will work because of HIPAA. Like I can't show my future husband all my stuff because of HIPAA. Like that's legal. That's illegal. So I
But your
think,
Facebook Messenger is probably not full of HIPAA people like your
right,
patients.
right,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Yep, yep.
And I think, to be honest with you, Facebook and I was being a little. I'm trying to be the other side of the argument just so we can have conversation. But
Mhm.
I mean, I've said this before: social media, just like any other tool, good or bad. But I think it's led to the onslaught of a lot of people discovering ways to go find themselves again that does not bring the family and the spouse with them.
Correct. That's
Mhm.
absolutely yes.
Yeah. All right. So people come in, you figure out how they like their apologies. When you say own both sides of it, well, that's a big deal. I don't know what's funny
How do
about
you like
that.
your steak? How do you like your apologies? It's about the same. Medium rare. Thanks.
True apologies are pretty rare. So there you go.
Oh
Let's see
wow.
what I
We
did
need to
there.
get into therapy and talk about some of this one.
That's the only reason this is my therapy right here. I'll start asking.
Okay.
I got some.
I'm sensing some resistance. What's that about for you?
What does it feel like? Hey, I'm going to do this. What does it feel like, my lack of progress, Carissa? How does that make you feel as a therapist?
It's not on me. I'm here for you. And if you
Okay.
to, take a different direction, we can do that.
Then let's talk about trust again. All right, so we're rebuilding it in a relationship.
Huh?
I come in, you do the basics with me. Tell me, and this is not a good question. Take it whatever direction you want, but tell me what it looks like when they both say yes, I want to make this relationship work.
Mhm.
What do you give them as homework? Is there homework people can do on this?
Sure. Yeah, and again, that's going to be unique to the individual. Let's say it's just couples, because again, we talked about all sorts of relationships. But if it's couples, yes, and depending on the individual story of the couple, I'll go through with people and ask, what are your triggers? What's the nature of what happened? What are some new boundaries? So that's a huge piece. Or like, what do we need some new boundaries in play for how y'all are navigating your day-to-day life or certain relationships or certain situations. So we'll talk about new types of boundaries that both people have to be on board for or on board with. So like again, people might think they want to repair until their partner says, well, these are kind of my new rules of play, or of the game. And if the other partner isn't on board, that can really stall things out. So the idea is, okay, what's the nature of what happened? What kind of new boundaries do we need to have? What are the triggers?
Mm-hmm.
What are the triggers? And then we're going to work through real intentional repair rituals, is what we call that, repair rituals around the triggers.
I'm in a minute. I'm going to ask you what work we can do on our own individually, because a lot of times rebuilding, and the way I take it, rebuilding trust isn't just with Carissa. If I'm in a relationship with you, it's also if Carissa and I don't make it because there's been a violation of trust, I've got to take me to another relationship, rebuilding trust and my instincts. I mean, apparently I've not read the room right. In the last relationship, something went on. There's got to be some way to build trust or be a little more, in going into that next relationship. But I want to ask you this: do men and women, how do they process both sides of this differently? You don't have to be specific, but a man and a woman comes to you, the woman's cheated and the man's got to be, and the man says, I want to do it. And the other way around. Have you seen how just those two things, the man and woman, process this pain differently than each other?
Talking about
Unique.
gender? Just
Yeah.
gender?
Yeah.
No, I really do think it's just personality,
Oh, okay.
attachment style. Because I have some men that are very, very anxious, and women, and they're married to women who are very avoidant, or men. Let's say if the wife's cheated, men that were originally secure, and then if she cheats, it puts them into this terrible anxiety and panic and fight or flight response and hypervigilance for a while. So people,
Mm.
I mean, if we're talking, I mean, cheating is a whole nother thing. That's a Yeah. So I think it just depends, to answer your question and not get too off track. I think it depends on the attachment style of the person, the personality, the nature of their relationships in general, confidence, sense of self, resourcefulness, intellect, intuition. Um, feel like there are a few different variables that inform
Yeah.
how someone. Mhm.
You have this very rarely happens on a pod. I mean, most times podcast goes in different directions, and that's cool. But you have drawn some lines in the sand that I was not prepared to really think about, and that is I was thinking of rebuilding trust specifically. And I know I've said this about around money and stuff, but the differences of trust when it comes to everything of the different circumstances. In other words, if you've cheated on me, that's a different trust than if you've spent money that you weren't supposed to spend
Yeah.
versus you're just lying about where you're at. You're not cheating on me, but you're just not coming. You're going to the bar and drinking with your buddies. There's different levels. I didn't
Yeah.
really wasn't prepared for that. When we started this thing, I was like, trust is trust.
No, no, bro.
All
Yeah.
those would piss me off in a different way.
For example, sure. Well, I mean, yeah. And so again, what is the nature of the offense or the issue? So it might be, I'm notoriously late. It's one of my biggest character flaws, hands down. I'm notoriously late. And so it might be, I'm telling somebody that I care about or my client, say I'm going to work on being on time. I'm going to work on being on time. Well, a lot of my clients probably won't trust that, or people who know me really well are going to be like, yeah, right. Yeah, right, Karissa. You're not going to, because I'm just not, I've always struggled with being on time. And so if I really want to repair that trust, because for some people it gets offensive. Like when you're late, it like, it's offensive. It's just, it feels disrespectful. You're wasting their time. It flies all over them. And it really can cause a rupture in the relationship. So if I'm working on, repairing your trust and that I can show up on time so you're not mad at me for half the session or half of our coffee date or whatever, that's different than.
You slept with me or slept around on me and we were in a relationship. It's a
That's
big
right.
difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you know what though? Here's the other thing. I don't know. See, this opens up Pandora's box. You paint these little scenarios. I don't want to live my whole life having to make adjustments for you being late if you can't. You know what I'm saying? I mean, when you said that, you go, well, take it offensive and some people don't care. I'm thinking to myself, so I've got to live the next 50 years always being late. That would drive me insane. Or
Right.
I have to spend the next 50 years wondering if you're cheating on me or the money. So I think now that we started this, and I started thinking about this 2 or 3 days ago, I think I think that's me. I think I'm just the peace
Right.
out.
Well, we call that avoidant attachment.
Do we call that, or would you call it? I'll just, if okay. Look at you take a simple. Well played. You're becoming a podcast master.
Thank
It's
you.
just look at the camera as you did it.
Hermit in the tea.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly what it
Yeah.
is. So I want to talk a little bit about moving forward to other relationships, but
Yeah.
I want to talk. I want to make sure people hear us and you give them some stuff. I know it depends on the violation. Can you paint a picture for somebody that may be dealing with building up the trust on cheating or something? Here's why. I want people to have something when they get off this, they can go home and say, this is the next step I need to do. Maybe it's call you or a therapist, or it could be sit down and figure this out about yourself. What do you recommend? If somebody's watching this, they're having issues with trusting their partner right now, what should they do when they stop watching this?
Are you talking about like because there's been an affair or
Yeah.
cheating?
Yeah. Let's talk about that one scenario. That
Sure.
way it gives some
Sure.
concrete.
Okay. My experience has been what I tell couples, because what sometimes couples will do is they try to, I think most honestly, if they're going to try and make it work, they will try and do it on their own without coaching. And I've said before, 70% of therapists claim to do couples work. Only about 11% have actual training. Even fewer have training with actual affair recovery protocol. So there is a protocol for a reason. And most of the time, if couples don't go through it and they're trying to make it work, the affair stuff just kind of sinks in like cancer.
Mm.
And it just is corrosive and it erodes and it eventually creates passive aggressive contempt and bitterness and resentment, of course, of course, of course. So I always say try to find somebody who knows how to lead you through it, to lead you through the repair rituals, to get the stuff out of your system and out of your heart that hasn't been addressed. In affair recovery, a lot of the time the person who has been betrayed will remain stuck if they don't believe that the person who hurt them or did the betraying really is sorry. Like the person who feels betrayed really wants to have a sense from their partner that they get the depths of how much they've been hurt. And if the person who went outside of the marriage doesn't communicate that in a meaningful and effective way, couples will stay very stuck. And the person who feels hurt and betrayed will go, "You just don't get it. You just don't get it."
But wouldn't that not be a little bit of a red flag that it's time to, I mean, if you violate, okay, sorry, I keep doing that. Look at you, you're getting mad. You're talking. Hold on, let me stop talking.
I'm not getting mad.
Yeah.
That goes back to like languages of apology
Mhm.
and being coached through it, because some people, like you said, they're like, okay, now you're micromanaging me. And one of the things I will tell couples that come to see me for this work is I'll say, okay, so for a season, when you made the choices you made, you gave up your rights at some level for a lot of autonomy. Like trust is a gift. And when you betray it, there are consequences to our choices. It's kind of like you detonated a bomb. You
Mhm.
detonated a bomb and you blew stuff up. And so you're not going to go back and find things the way that they were. You're just not. And so to pick up the pieces is going to take a lot of humility. It's going to be giving up a lot of the things, the independence you used to have. And you're going to have an attitude of, I'll eat crow and I'll do whatever it takes to show you that I'm sorry and you can trust me again. And those people that show up with that attitude, they make it through. But the people who show up with the I'm not going to do that. Okay, there's a timeline on how long I'm going to do this, or you're not going to micromanage me, or okay, I said I'm sorry, like that defensive, gross, self-added, like entitled, like I don't have to. I'll say, listen, bro, or listen, sis, like that's not the right attitude. You made those choices to betray your partner, and so if you want to make it work, you got to eat a lot of humble pie, because that's the nature of adults and consequences. And if they're not willing to do that, it probably won't work.
Oh, let's talk about the other side of that.
Yeah.
The person who may have been hurt. Again, we'll use the affair because that's the most, egregious that we can think of, but it could
Sure.
be anything. There's also some point that I would think I need to work on being graceful and and having some mercy. I know that people go, well, you've been hurt, but in my world, if me and Chris, if we go to therapy and I'm being humble where I screwed up or you screwed up, whoever's the one that's putting in the work with them, I'm gonna have to also work on the healing part of me is how do I continue to not just trust you, but love you? And love brings a little bit of grace and mercy.
Mm-hmm.
15 minutes late doesn't mean they're cheating again, right? They're getting a message that you didn't read, doesn't mean they're cheating again. Yet that's really hard to get to that point, I would think.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what are you asking me, Clint?
My question is, do you deal with the other side of that on how to reestablish the mercy and grace that you have to have in a relationship moving forward
Yeah.
in a healthy way?
Yeah. Usually if that comes up,
Real quick, in other words, you don't want somebody just be the
yeah,
master, making sure that you're meeting the agenda of how to apologize to me. There's got to be a relationship there still.
correct. So usually how that works is if their partner who is trying to repair deliberately is doing the things that we've agreed upon in our work together, and they're doing them faithfully, and they're showing up, and they're trying to be humble, and they're trying to be demonstrate repentance and humility, and the other partner isn't receiving it. That's when I'll try and check in with that partner and say, okay, what's going on here that it's not landing?
Mm.
Why isn't this landing? Sometimes it may turn into a power and control thing. And so then we have to address that. Like, well, if I withhold mercy and forgiveness from you, then I have power and control. And maybe they've
Mm.
never had power and control in the relationship. Or maybe they just have control issues in general that need to be addressed that maybe led to some of this in the first place. But usually, if couples if the person that is supposed to be receiving is not receiving, I'll check in and say what's going on there. And then if there's the unforgiveness, then we'll talk about, I'll talk about spirituality if that's an option. Or sometimes it's linked to wounds in the past that feel really inflamed as a result of this that maybe they've never dealt with. So we'll talk about doing like individual healing around similar wounds of rejection, abandonment, neglect, betrayal, maybe childhood stuff. A lot of the time there's a lot of brain matching or scene matches in the brain when we're
Mhm.
when we go through those things. So that would be individual work. Um, does that make sense?
But it does. If you put yourself though in this scenario, again, we're talking about affairs, but it could be anything.
Yeah.
That day to day of trying to repair trust can be very tumultuous. There's a lot of waves. There's a lot of anxiety, a lot of it's almost like it's a loss. It's almost like you're grieving something.
Yeah.
It's almost like trust is once it's dead and you're trying to revive it, it's like you're grieving the trust you had because that's I don't know, that just seems a very difficult day to day thing to navigate.
Yeah. Well, what I try to do with couples in the midst of all that heavy stuff is try to create a lot of positive momentum for connection and play outside of that if they're open to it,
What
depending
does
on
that mean? What do you mean by that?
love languages,
Mm,
dates, intentional like bonding. So if I remember why I like you, if you're speaking my love languages to me and I feel like you love me and care about me and you're thinking about me and I'm important to you, that's
mm,
going to help things land differently and keep me encouraged to keep repairing versus doing this in a desert or in a deficit. So couples need there's a sweet spot of couples needing to keep the positive exchanges going on where they're still bonding and attaching and creating positive momentum forward, as well
mhm.
as like turning towards the heavy, hard stuff and addressing that regularly.
Is journaling part of how people heal through this? Do you ever recommend people to journal?
Sure.
Okay, I didn't know. I didn't know how that worked. I've
Yeah,
never.
EMDR, the accelerated resolution therapy, the ART, that can be helpful for kind of neutralizing some of the distressing emotion around this, so you don't feel like you're in fight or flight or in shut down and trauma body and trauma brain, because there is some PTSD for a lot of people with this, like legitimate relationship PTSD. So journaling, obviously a lot of self-care, individual therapy, but again, those brain therapies can be really helpful too. Mhm.
Do you also recommend people talk outside of therapy intentionally? Like on Thursdays at 4 o'clock or Thursdays at 8, we're gonna visit our relationship and we're talking where we're at. Now we don't meet with Carissa till Tuesdays,
Mhm.
but every Thursday, is that something or do you just talk about it when it comes up?
That depends on the couple. Some couples, if they're in a stable enough place and a loving enough place to do that, absolutely. Some couples, there's so much resentment and hurt built up that they can't have those conversations outside of my office for a while because they don't have the tools yet and they're not
Yes.
open and receptive. So it turns into a war. I have some couples, they'll leave my office and go sit in a church parking lot down the street and talk for another 3 hours, or they'll talk in my parking lot for 2 hours. It just depends on the couple.
Mm, yeah. So, and we can come back and bounce back to rebuilding it, but
Yeah.
do you talk with because you do more than marriage, right? I mean, more than couple, you do individual
Oh,
too.
yeah. Oh,
So
yeah.
how is it the same techniques to get Clint better to go to a new relationship if Clint's old heart's been broken and it's all those trust is that the same stuff you use with me as you do in a marriage counseling or couples
No,
counseling?
not necessarily. No. So, like, if you were coming to see me and said, "Hey, Chris, I have all these trust issues,"
There's
uh,
no reason. I saw the little smirk. What are you talking about? Go for it. Yeah.
and trust issues,
Yeah.
uh, I would want to know a lot about your backstory and how those got there, and usually look for themes or patterns. That usually our wounds and our hurts have themes or patterns, and then we talk about like moving forward, green flags and red flags to look for with people, and just like
Mm,
how be more astute, more alert, more aware moving forward. We talk about, anytime we decide to try and put ourselves out there, there is a risk involved. And even in the beginning, as we know, people can be one way when you first marry them, and then 20 years down the road, they can change. And I mean, there's all sorts of tragic stuff that happens where, hey, we were married 20, 30, 40 years, and he or she left me.
that happens even a year into a relationship too,
Sure.
though. I mean, that people change, and
So
yeah.
I would tell people anytime we choose to enter into a relationship or into the dating scene, there will be risk involved. And if you're not in a place where you're ready to, you can healthily handle the risks and you're ready to put yourselves out there and try to trust again, or possibly be rejected, or kind of sort through stuff and sift through stuff, you're probably not ready to date and put yourself out there. But if people are, we'll talk about like red flags. What has your past taught you to pay more attention to? Green flags. What are some positive, healthy? Go ahead.
Real quick, I want to ask you about the red flags
Yeah.
because have you found a lot of people that fall back into the same old patterns, right? Because they don't heal. So I go, this happened, this happened, this happened. Have you found that they have the same mindset we were talking about a minute ago? Like I'll be different. This time's different. Oh, but that's not that big a deal. They handle it. They find themselves making those excuses, running by the same red flags every single
Sure.
time.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
the key is how to hit your brakes. That's the habit. I
Yeah.
yeah.
And that's where we talk about like the healing growth, the healing journey of like therapy and self healing and work and spirituality, and like learning to do things differently so that we don't choose the same guy or girl and with different skin on over and over again. Or a lot of people make the mistake of pendulum swinging. This is common. So people get a divorce and they don't want to be alone, obviously, and so they'll pendulum swing and choose the total opposite before they've done any of their work and healing. And 2 years in, they're like, well, this isn't what I really liked either, because they didn't figure out why they were drawn to the other person in the first place, what went wrong there, what part they played, and what do they want moving forward. They just needed comfort and distraction and something else that was different. So there's a lot of merit to us slowing down and doing the work around what we learned from previous relationships and how we want to try and do better and different in the future and choose healthier.
Yeah, I think one of the things I have gone out, I have dated uh, not the majority of my divorce, a small part of since my divorce. I think it's also dangerous, and I don't think podcasts are worth a lot if you can't be a little transparent on your personal life. Sometimes I think it's a dangerous place to get to, where being alone is that's a really you don't get hurt when you're alone. You don't get hurt there,
Hmm.
right? You just don't. And I became very comfortable after the divorce of just that's a comfortable place. I mean, I can fill it with other stuff. It doesn't
Hmm.
have to be I'm just sitting in a chair looking out a dark window, but you know, but being alone,
Just say,
yeah, and I don't I don't have to open the door even if you're knocking.
hmm Clint, there is, I can't access it right now because of this camera situation, but you have the internet in front of you.
I do.
Will you look up a quote, please?
Please, yes.
C.S. Lewis is the author.
Yep.
Um, let's see, and I'm trying to remember.
What's the topic?
Well, some of the words in it are cold, dark, motionless.
Motionless.
Motionless, cold, dark, and motionless.
Let's see. Wrap it carefully. Is that it?
Yes. Will you
Wrap
read?
it carefully, or let's see. Wrap it carefully round with hobbies and
Okay.
little luxury. Huh?
Yep. It's bigger than that. There are a few sentences before that.
All right. Well, hold on. Let me go.
Loving.
Give me 1 second.
Yep.
All right. I'll try it now. You ready? All right, here we go. To love at all is to be vulnerable. Love anything, and your heart will be wrung and possibly broken. If you want to make sure of keeping it intact, you must give it to no one, not even an animal. Wrap it carefully round with hobbies and little luxuries. And now it's asking me to subscribe. Avoid all entanglements. Lock it up safe in the casket or coffin of your selfishness. I don't like this quote. Oh, this is stupid. But in that casket, safe, dark, motionless, airless, it will change. It will not be broken. It will become unbreakable, unpenetrable, unredeemable. To love is to be vulnerable. It's a good quote. Just right now, I just was our audio people are like, are they not talking anymore? Are we breaking up on the air as far as podcast guests? Is
Yep.
that what we're doing?
Yeah. Just
Yeah.
a pause.
What'd you say?
Therapeutic pause.
Therapeutic pause. Well, but so I guess the reason I bring that up, and again, y'all use me as the example on some of
Sure.
this. Um, there is more than one way to deal with broken trust,
Mhm. Mhm.
and feeling better, air quote, not hurting anymore doesn't mean you're healed.
That's right.
That
Amen. Well
right?
said.
Yeah,
Well, yep.
yeah. time will do. And I say this about scar. I would say this about trauma. And again, everybody has different levels of it. I look at scars on the body as nature's tattoos. There's a story behind every scar. I love scars. I love scars. There's a story behind a scar. There's a story behind a tattoo. It's the same way in our hearts and our minds and our emotions. The scars that are left, there's a story behind them. The problem with it is a lot of times the people that you get in relationships with don't hear about those other stories. That's
That's
a
right.
story that has to stay kind of silent, right?
Mhm. Well, yes, depending. I have found the way that we tell our story. You still with me?
Yeah.
I think the way that we tell our story indicates the level of healing or the lack of healing there is. For example, because since I have been an adult, I've only dated, maybe that's why I'm still single. Uh, I've only dated men that are married and divorced and have kids. Married and divorced, have kids. And as I'm listening to how they talk about their marriage, their divorce, their relationship, their ex wife, I can hear if they've done their healing work or if they're still stuck. And that tells me if I want to get engaged or not, or I mean, become engaged emotionally or
Right.
relationally or not. Because if that person hasn't done the healing work, they don't have a lot of energy and attachment tendrils or fibers to offer me because they're still attached and wrapped up with all this stuff back here. So for me, if somebody's bitter, angry, they haven't owned the part that they played in it, they get really, there's a lot of inflection, it's really intense, like all of that tells me
Hmm.
no, like they have a lot of work to do, or they have work to do and there's not room for me yet. Versus, yeah, we were married, this is how it happened, this is how it fell apart, blah 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 blah, wish her well. That's
I tell people this all the time. One of the best things I ever did after divorce. So I am a gatekeeper into my world. I am that's where I defaulted a lot of my time to. I don't mind being alone. It doesn't bother me. If I reach out and show my vulnerable side to somebody and they accept it, great. But if they don't respond, I don't beg. I'm like, cool, rock on, you do you. But the thing that I think I did right after the divorce, I went straight into coaching and therapy.
yeah,
And that's one of the things that I think helped she and I keep the relationship we have around the kids is because I came to the conclusion very quickly, and this is true about trust. We're not getting off topic, but we are all victims and we are all villains. If
yeah,
if I'm in a relationship with somebody, I am unintentionally going to hurt them from time to time. I'm
yeah,
going to do that. I do not want to. I hurt my kids, right?
yeah.
Everybody hurts. I'm also going to be hurt.
Mhm.
And if I leave a relationship and the only thing I take with it is what was done to me or what I've done to others, then that's going to be how I look at you in the next relationship. And that's not cool to bring to the table.
No, it's not. And it's not because what you end up doing is projecting a lot of our anger onto the new person. And also like with like the sexuality piece, I don't want to hear about your sex life and what you loved about it, what you hated about it, unless I ask you. And so people who are still holding on to that or still haven't done the healing work of like detaching, disconnecting, making themselves ready and available to attach to a new person, they will inappropriately disclose those facts when you're getting to know them. And to me, I'm like, you're not over her. You're not over him. So for me, those are things like you were saying, there are parts of our story that the new person doesn't get to hear about. I don't agree with that. I think it's in how we share the story.
Mm.
Is it shared in a boundaried way that shows honor and respect and reverence to the new person I'm trying to bond with?
Yeah, but some stories though are my story. I mean, I hate to say
Sure.
this. Yeah, I
Sure.
mean, some stories are just our stories.
Right.
Do you know
Right.
what I'm saying? That they're not your stories. And
Right.
if so, there's a difference between you being transparent and just making somebody drink from a freaking fire hose. You're like, oh my god, I don't need to hear everything. I just want to make
Yeah.
sure you're not
Yeah.
apparently,
Yeah.
you know.
I
Uh,
start therapist on a date, I'm like, no, this is not working.
what'd you
Nope.
say?
As soon as I'm at work on a date playing therapist, I'm like, no, you're not ready.
Oh, oh god, that would drive me insane.
It's a huge turnoff. It's so unattractive.
But how do you turn that off? I mean, don't you find yourself just automatically things will be said? Don't you find your mind going into therapist mode when maybe that was not, you weren't being invited into that mode? It's just they're talking about a story, and all of a sudden, like you said, somebody's talking about their ex-wife or they're talking about how they handled their last business partner. Doesn't your mind just go directly into, oh, I'm going to start analyzing this and go, wait a minute, they're just
You
telling
know,
a story.
Clint, I have been an analytical brain since I came out of the womb. I
Mm,
can't get away from that. I have been an analytical thinker from childhood. I got into stuff all the time just to analyze why. So I've
hmm
just been a little scientist, and that's just who. That's what makes me good with people. Is I just want to know people and the why behind their experience and what they do, what they're feeling, etc. So that part of myself I can't turn off. But as far as me like giving tips and pointers and
Oh, no, no. Yeah.
yeah, no,
Jeez almighty. By the way, if
yeah,
you've gone on guys that do that on a date, they've got the problem on that. I don't want to go out with you and go, so tell me about what do you about this attachment disorder I have? I don't know. I'm had 2
oh,
glasses of wine. Leave me
happens.
alone.
Got to set boundaries.
I want to say this too. One of the things, and now that we're talking, that I think you run into a danger of if you don't heal before you go, if maybe you tried to work your relationship out,
Yeah,
I could run the risk of walking into the relationship with someone and then holding them to the same standard. And I'm going to try to do this in a very clumsy way that I should have held my partner to. In other words,
yeah,
um, that trust ritual, like I'm going to look, who are you texting? Where are you? I will start asking that of you, and you've not broken my trust yet. And all of a sudden it's going to come across as micromanaging. Like, why
yeah.
are you wanting to know I'm 15 minutes late from work? What's the big deal? It's my boss that's texting me. What the hell are you wanting to look at my phone for?
No, you're right.
Yeah.
100%. You're 100% right. Yep, and that can be a sign that you haven't done enough of your own healing work,
Or none.
or not. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm wanting Carissa to pay and live up to the standards that
Yep.
someone else should have, that becomes a me problem, and that's probably your red flag.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Wow, see
Yeah.
how that just came full circle?
Good job.
I think so. All right, let's talk about all your notes you have. I want to make sure people take away from this rebuilding inside a relationship or new relationship. What else do we need to cover to make sure people can leave this knowing there's some things they can do or look at when they're done watching or listening?
Okay. First of all, are there any questions online?
Right now, we got 3 or 4 comments, but they're just making comments about how much they love our podcast.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna read through bullet points again. An apology without change behavior is just manipulation. Transparency is essential. Err on the side of over communicating. I always tell people just be annoying, just be over the top until the person finally says, okay, okay, all right, I got it, I got it. Like, I'd rather that than like people are pulling. So, err on the side of over communicating. Boundaries. You're going to need new boundaries, and you're both going to have to be on board with uh, honoring the boundaries. If you're both not on the same,
What's
not
a
going.
boundary? Give me an example. Is that hey, we're just not going to be on social media after when get home? Is that going to be
It
we
depends on
call?
the nature of the transgression.
Okay.
So,
All right. All right.
yeah, if boundaries are, hey, if I'm going to be late, if you we're going to be late after work, I need you to voice memo me or shoot me a text and say, hey, I'm running behind because
Gotcha. Okay.
blank blank. So, or yeah, social media or phones down when we're at home or passcodes or it just depends on the nature of what we're trying to
I
repair.
was just trying to give an example of what a
Yeah.
boundary might look like, but okay.
Yeah.
I got you.
So just rules of engagement, agreed upon rules of engagement.
Mhm.
Languages of apology matter. You're going to have to discuss the hurt and the transgression. So be prepared to have tough conversations, especially if it's ongoing. If it's a relationship that's more intimate and ongoing, you're going to have some tough conversations. So you're going to want to have tools to know how to do that. Consistent, like I said before, consistent change of behavior over time. And when words and actions match, that helps reestablish trust. What is the level of devastation for what's happened? Like you
Mm.
said at the beginning, can we even come back from this? Do I want to come back from this? And the truth is, sometimes there's too much scar tissue. The wound is too intense or bad that people can't come back from it.
Yeah.
That's real. Are both parties willing to participate? And there needs to be an attitude of repentance and humility.
Yeah. I wonder what I should have looked the stats up of the odds of once the trust has been broken, especially on the affair level, what is the odds that you stay in that relationship? That may be depressing for people, but and it's probably out there. I should have looked it up, but I
I
would be surprised.
I should look up if people are having more affairs than ever now because of things like social media, et cetera, et cetera. Um, I feel like they're becoming more commonplace.
I'm just gonna look it up right now. Let's see. Let's see. According to recent study, survey 20% of married men and 13% of married women admitted to having sex with someone other than their spouse. Infidelity rates among women are on the rise, having increased by 40% in the last 20 years. Those stats are from 2022.
Okay.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
Okay. You're never gonna not be without clients,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
kind of a sad thing.
It is. And to your point, that's why I love that quote that you were talking about vulnerability, and you were saying it's just easier to stay alone and be safe. Yeah, but then what? What does it cost us to go into isolation and to stop taking risks in a relationship?
Yeah. It's a good point. You know what I think? People should just come talk to you, is what I think.
Thanks, Clint.
That's what I think people should do.
Both of us.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I got, yeah, I'll just say, hey, that's some pretty heavy shit. You should go talk to Carissa when
Yep.
she's over her, when she's out of her iron lung.
When I'm done with my tuberculosis. Mhm.
How long have you been sick?
All of July.
But you're better now. You're feeling better now.
I had no voice and I was on steroids and antibiotics, and it's ugh.
Tell everybody how to find you. Like, what happens if somebody's saying, you know what, I need to get me and my husband, or at least me, into someplace ASAP, or me
Yeah,
and my boyfriend,
yeah, or me and my girlfriend, or me and my wife.
whoever. Yeah. Yeah. I want to learn more about being in a relationship. How do I do that?
Yeah, I love.
Josh, real quick. Josh Smith said, "Good podcast. Thank you both. Thank you very much, Josh, because it felt a little rambling because of all the technology issues. So thank you for that. I
Thank
appreciate it.
you, Josh. I appreciate you tuning in.
Yeah.
He's a man. I love us intimacy.com. You can look me up, email me, phone numbers on there. It's not hard to find me. I have a business page. You can shoot me a message. I prefer email or phone call or text, but not hard to find.
Hey, Karisa Kaye,
Hey, Clint Powell.
thank you for doing this and your patience.
God bless. Thank you. I'm sorry about the mic. We got to like get this shit together.
I think it ended up being pretty good.
I hope
You know?
so.
Yeah.
I hope so.
All
Yeah.
right.
How many viewers we had?
Well, yeah, I mean, we've had quite a few. We've had 8 or 9 likes. We had up to 20 something watching, so we're
Oh,
good.
good. Well,
And then it'll
thank
go out to podcast. Hannah Page Viar, is it Viar? I don't know how to pronounce it.
you. Hannah. Yeah.
She said, "Great job." So thank you very much. So apparently people got something out of it. It's just me and you that felt awkward. And I guess I need to apologize to Damon for holding him down while his brother let the air out of his bicycle tires.
Oh,
I didn't remember that. So
bless it.
she says Hannah says she's your biggest fan. So there you go.
She's my biggest fan.
Yep, that's what she said.
Hannah is the best esthetician in Texas.
In Texas. Wow.
I know.
You're pulling them in from around the world, all the way from the country of Texas,
The country, the Lone Star State.
the Lone Star State.
Clint
Hey,
Powell, I appreciate you and the privilege it is to be on your show.
no, it's always fun. It's always informative, and you bring your A game. I hope you go feel better, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.